Are we ready to hit it? Well, welcome to this session on the LocalWiki. And hi out there in cyberspace. We think the eChicago conference is an appropriate place to talk about the new and exciting technology that promises to empower large numbers of people who haven't yet been empowered to represent themselves and their community in digital format. I'm at the University of Illinois in Champaign, Urbana, and this is a great challenge for us. For example, we are a land-grant institution, and the land-grant institutions that were created in the United States in the 19th century were an important intervention in that the federal government created land in every state that was given to the state to be used in creating a university that would have a direct impact on the economy and social life of that state. And of course, here in the Midwest, a lot of that focus was on pigs, chicken, corn, soybeans, and wheat. Really the breadbasket of the country. And in the new 21st century context, land-grant universities are reinventing themselves. And so the question is, in this post-industrial period, what is going to be the mission of the land-grant university? And that speaks really to what is the nature of the society we live in. And so what we're talking about today really is one of the ways in which the feudal moat that often surrounds a university can be overcome in the 21st century. Because we're talking about a wiki software that is the absolutely most democratic software that has yet been rolled out as far as I'm concerned, and we'll hear from two speakers who can clarify that for us. We have two speakers today. One who is key in the historic national development of the LocalWiki, and who can explain somewhat the history of it, the origin of it, and how it has played a role in various places throughout the country. I understand there's some 80 localities that have had the LocalWiki experience, and that seems like a very important starting point. And then another speaker who's going to speak about the local experience in Champaign, Urbana. So our first speaker is Philip Neustrom. I should have remembered that. Brian Zelip, who's from the University of Illinois, is going to speak first about the local experience, and then Philip Neustrom is going to speak about the LocalWiki from a national perspective. And without any further ado, I introduce Brian Zelip.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Brian Zelip. I am a graduate student at the Library and Information Science School at the University of Illinois down in Urbana, Champaign. Before that, I lived in Toledo, Ohio for a good decade and a half. So I'm situated nicely, having contributed to founding both LocalWiki projects in Champaign, Urbana, and Toledo to speak about it today. So very briefly, Champaign, Urbana, CUWiki.net has about 1,500 pages and nearly 200 different users who have actually registered to edit the site, although we know that more folks than that have anonymously also added to editing the site and some of the content that's up there. ToledoWiki, on the other hand, which started around, so CUWiki started in March of 2012, and ToledoWiki started in November of 2012. And Toledo has around 800 pages and nearly 150 registered users. that have signed up, and of course a little bit more than that. Both are active and both are feeling ebbs and flows, but are on the rise. And what I wanted to do right now was talk a little bit about the historical context out of which the work of the particular people involved in CUWiki and ToledoWiki, where this work comes from. And so to do that, we go back around the late 90s to Toledo. And Toledo is a post-industrial Midwestern city, sort of at the belt buckle of the Rust Belt. In Toledo, our work starts at the University of Toledo, where we had a strong relationship with a community technology center in the Central City African-American community called the Murchison Community Technology Center. And we had this concept, a strong concept at play called cyber power, where we tried to mobilize the community in which we were working in and students to help create cyber power by people on the other side of the digital divide in the communities all around. And we do this in multiple ways. We have a history of working with collecting data in the community and posting that online as a way to get people to cross the digital divide by seeing themselves in cyberspace, and for people to enhance their communication and connections in the ways that information and communication technologies do. So here's a slide of one of the main website projects that we had called Cyber Church, where teams of students and a few community folks really fanned out around the community and started taking pictures and collecting information of local churches and putting it all online in a directory kind of form template. And this is in the late 90s, around 97 and 98. We had other projects as well. So my thesis work was on putting up websites for all of the African-American beauty salons in town, which started from a long-standing research focus in the African-American Studies program on the political culture of everyday life in the African-American community. And so hair was a very big focus. And so the hair shops as a site of cultural production was an important space to sort of a pillar of the community, an important space to get online as a way of snowballing further movement online as well. We also did a lot of other things, including some math practice proficiency testing for elementary schools all throughout the city. And there was a large internet component to that too. What began as a local tutoring effort in the education front in Toledo quickly became a statewide resource and global resource, really, because the tests that we created to help provide practice for the communities that we were working with went online, and immediately this this test that was formed around the state proficiency test was available to all. And we had other people from around the state using these tests as well. And there were other things that we did on the university side too, not just in the community, where we began collecting data on the field of Black Studies. So we had a website which is still very active called eBlack Studies, which collects data on the field of Black Studies in many different ways, and we'll see some more information about that later. Some of the work in Toledo also culminated in the production of a hip-hop CD called Reboot, which is also available here at the literature table. And this was a CD that brought together the cultural producers in Toledo around creating an album, a hip-hop album, where the content was around information technology. So each track actually was on IT in some way. So this is the kind of history that our particular group is coming from with work in the community and online spaces. So then we fast forward a few years, and the community informatics work that started in Toledo moves to the University of Illinois. Different place, similar research agenda, and a similar struggle against the digital divide, poverty, and exclusion. And so the research agenda continued with collecting data about the community and other different kind of networks. So some of the stuff we see here is a website that's been going on for a long time, brothermalcolm.net. This is a website on a digital archive on the work and life and times of Malcolm X. We heard a little bit yesterday about eBlackCU. This was a digital library on the African American community in Champaign, Urbana. And then we see that extracting out to a statewide level where we collected information on the African American experience in Illinois online, and also drilling down into Chicago with the lens of music, trying to collect all the links to cultural production around music in the African American experience that was online. We also at the time of moving to the University of Illinois in an analogous fashion to eChicago, whereas this is sort of an annual event, there's also an annual series of lectures entitled the Digital Divide Lecture Series that happens at the Library and Information Science School that calls on key people from institutions around the community to talk about how the digital divides that they experience in their profession and in their network, wherever they're at. And all that stuff is online, video archives, etc. But you can kind of see the kind of work that we're doing in terms of collecting information about the community and reinvesting that, putting it online, and having it then be used in the actual community as well. Other things that we've done there include putting computers in African American hair shops as well. So that kind of focus continues. So we started thinking about contemplating how to create a community website to have maximum impact on the community with a low technical barrier. Something like Facebook, but without the gated community. We've been making a lot of different websites, and one of our findings is oftentimes we are the one that are interacting with the websites most. And so we're struggling with this idea of how to really engage the community around these community-oriented websites. And one day, one of us saw an article about sociology in Wikipedia. There was a sociology professor who wrote about his students, how he was assigning his students to do some work on fundamental sociological concepts in Wikipedia. And so we sort of took that and ran with it, as it already was aligned with our thinking. And so we started thinking about a wiki as a next step in our community informatics activism. We put a call out to a few friends who themselves work at the intersection of community and technology to help shape the form of this new community wiki. So we started looking for software packages and Googling keyword strings like local community wiki. And in fact, I think it was Abigail Sackman, who is chairing the panel in the very next room, who stumbled across localwiki.org for the first time. And this great video that they made that just kind of laid out what the software was all about. And immediately we were hooked. So the first public meeting that we tried to recruit as many people at happened in early December 2011 at the Champaign Library, and this is a picture of that meeting. Besides our lab from the university, a gentleman who was on a panel yesterday, Brian Bell, was there, who spoke yesterday, and he runs a computer recycling program locally that's on the verge of becoming a statewide computer recycling program. Also there were owners of an African-American barbershop and an African-American beauty salon. A couple active folks from a community radio station were present. A church staff member / community activist was there. The owner of a local wireless internet service provider was at the meeting too. And a lead staff member of the local public education and government access television channel was also there. And this group became the funding group who met publicly twice a month in different libraries from December off into the spring. A handful of new faces also joined us over the course of time. We deliberated over what needs a website about the community could meet, what kind of things it should do, and how people should be able to use it, and what it should be called. Some thought using the word wiki would be unfamiliar to and alienate a portion of the community. But the main debate that we experienced was around what software to use. The techies wanted to base it on a complex software platform that they had been developing in for years, which was Drupal. Collectively, we got a taste of Drupal when a site was set up to help organize the process of our committee meetings. The other main option, though, was LocalWiki, which was a new software platform that no one was familiar with, but was easy to use and very powerful. We showed the LocalWiki video a couple times and walked through and edited the first launched LocalWiki site, which was in Denton, Texas. In fact, there was even a member of our group who had sort of an ancestral link to Denton. So that was our first experience in actually editing a LocalWiki site. And it was easy peasy. The debate around software sort of brought our momentum to a standstill. There was kind of a stalemate within the group to the point where one meeting, only 2 of us showed up. And it was that very night that I purchased the hosting server package for a month to just install LocalWiki and try it out to get out of the stalemate. This move sort of liberated us from the stalemate and allowed everyone to just sort of work on it on their own time, which eventually resulted in the uptake of what's now CUWiki. So much of the content that summer came from manually bringing in information from our other websites about the community. There were less than 10 of us building CUWiki when the fall of that school year began, and Kate Williams, her community informatics class, was organized around building CUWiki with her students. These students contributed significantly to quantity and quality of information on the wiki. And they also began developing a style guide of best practices for editing the wiki. We also had some other experiences at this time where there were some outreach efforts, which the first of those included going to the farmer's market on a Saturday morning and fanning out to all of the vendors to take photos and to write down information, which we then fanned back out to the local library very close to the market and uploaded all that information to CUWiki. And this effort with the students really helped bring CUWiki past the fanfare of the 1,000th page mark. Let's see. Anyway, here we go. Some of the photos from that time of doing some outreach at the farmer's market. A little bit about Toledo. Toledo came about in the context of a national organization's competition. So Code for America, which is a national organization that tries to promote the use of software towards civic ends. They released this challenge called the Race for Reuse campaign to spur as much deployment of civic apps as possible. I'd already, coming from Toledo, I had a lot of social capital there, a lot of friends, and knew it was really a place to ripe for a LocalWiki project. And so the moons happened to be aligned. I happened to have a couple of scheduled times to be in Toledo during the Race for Reuse campaign. So I made a few phone calls, met some folks, and we organized for a Learn and Launch event at right around Thanksgiving, where we hoped that lots of people would show up and catch the LocalWiki bug. And indeed, that's what happened. We had a blowout event at the coffee shop. Over 60 folks came, which included parents and their children, folks who found out about the event on Facebook, artists and musicians. There was a city councilman in attendance, and very importantly, a couple key representatives from the local tech sector, who are emerging as leadership for ToledoWiki were also there. It was this event that got ToledoWiki recognized as the Race for Reuse Best Effort. I just want to give a quick shout out to Rachel and Kelly and Tony and Keith for nurturing the ToledoWiki flame. And also to 8-year-old Eddie, who might possibly be the youngest LocalWiki editor, who at the Learn and Launch event asked a few questions and put up a wiki page about his school. Some of the success stories in Toledo beyond the Race for Reuse competition there's been a strong institutional uptake in the very beginning. So some organizations such as the Toledo Metro Parks, an alternative community newspaper, and the Toledo Symphony and other arts organizations all assigned some of their staff to flesh out details of their institution onto ToledoWiki. Another success is that there's an infrastructure of monthly meetings that are at play. And recently, a guest from an established digital local history project called Toledo's Attic came and presented to the group to talk about how the two projects might collaborate and how the use of this digital history website, Toledo's Attic, can be used as historical sources of information for ToledoWiki. So what's next for these two projects? Well, for CU, what we're trying to do is really expand beyond the mostly university and mostly white population groups that have really taken it up so much. So aside from our work in the African American community, another thing that's happened is a local Spanish teacher has started assigning some of her students to translate pages into Spanish. And so there's a list of different pages. Actually, here's one page, for example, that's been translated, as well as the list of tags of other pages that are also in Spanish too. Coming up in just a couple weeks, we have an edit party scheduled with the Black Chamber of Commerce of Champaign County to build web pages for businesses that currently don't have a website. And this diversification is really the challenge that all local wikis face, I think. How to develop local wikis into a real representation of the community so that it's not just the early adopters, the mostly hipsters, the mostly young, the mostly techies, and the mostly campus-based folks who are driving it. We are determined to work hard toward this end, and we will be sharing our story, our challenges and successes along the way. We invite you to stay updated with our work and are eagerly following others' stories as they work to make their communities more inclusive using LocalWiki. We look forward to any future plans to bring regional and national local wikis together, like the role that eChicago has played these past 2 years. Thanks very much and happy editing.
So you can see the slides.
It's pretty meta.
What, being able to see the slides?
Yeah, I think
That's it. Video.
Easy now.
Can move it up.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't realize that you can see the screen. Okay. All right. So Brian talked about Champaign, Urbana, and I kind of just wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk about sort of the global LocalWiki project and where we've come in the past year and kind of where we see the project going and the challenges that we face over the next year to 5-10 years out. And so right now, basically, this is sort of a map of all of the LocalWiki instances that we know about. There's around 80 or so, or actually there's a number here. So there's 71 independent projects in 10 different countries and translated into 7 different languages. And so this is really awesome. And if we were to look at this map a year ago, it would probably be about 20 or so projects, which is a pretty good growth. And so right here, this is the a graph of the total content on all of the LocalWiki projects that we know about. So all the textual content over time. And some of the projects go back, the data that we have goes back to about 2007 before we started the formal LocalWiki project. And that arrow is pretty much where we actually started the LocalWiki project. So the LocalWiki software platform has been installed around 1,000 different times. So that doesn't mean there's 1,000 different instances that we can find, but as far as we know, our tracking says that it's been installed about 1,000 different times. So people may be just testing it or installing it on their laptop or something like that. Across all LocalWiki instances that we have access to traffic information for, as far as we can tell, about 384,000 different people use a LocalWiki in some way, shape, or form every month. And per year, it's about 28.8 million page views are served across all the different LocalWiki instances right now. So that's pretty significant. And so the sort of new projects that have come up over the past year or so are in Grand Rapids. We have this great project, Baguette.org, which is a rebirthing of an older project similar to ArborWiki that was sort of left. Unlike ArborWiki, this project was a little bit more unmaintained. It was just sort of sitting there for years, and a group of local civic hackers and people that were interested in sort of revitalizing Grand Rapids got involved and sort of recreated it as a LocalWiki, and they've been having basically monthly meetups since then. Obviously, Champaign, Urbana, CUWiki, Brian just showed this exact same picture. We've got Raleigh-Durham, TriangleWiki. They were around, I think, last year when I talked, but they're still going and they've been doing some great stuff. Kitchener, Ontario. This project started as a workshop by an artist. He held I think like a 4-day-long workshop, and that sort of kickstarted it, and now they're still maintaining it. In Seattle, there's SeattleWiki.net. A fellow that was living in Olympia ended up moving to Seattle, and then he started SeattleWiki, and they've been trying to get, so for a while it was just him, and now he's actually kind of got this group of people that are working with him on the project, which is great. South Bend, Indiana, I actually don't know too much about this project. It was started at a hackathon about a month ago. Summit County, Ohio, again, was started at actually the same hackathon as the South Bend project. Tallahassee, Florida, TallahasseeWiki.org. So this project is being spearheaded by a nonprofit in Tallahassee that runs these community forums, and they actually held this thing called Camp Wiki over the summer, last summer, and had, I think, a series of 3 or 4 events where they came, people had free coffee, and they sat down and showed people how to use Tallahassee Wiki, and they sort of ran a little contest and tried to get people more involved. And so outside of the United States, we've got a few projects. So in the sort of Tokyo area, and I actually don't know enough about this, but there's a bunch of people in Japan that are really into LocalWiki. And so this is actually a picture of this Open Data Day that was held about a month and a half ago. And the guy's pointing the word LocalWiki, which is the only word in English that I can read on that board. And then there's other people down there that are in like different rooms. They have this like crazy hangout thing going on. And so they actually have this site, localwiki.jp, that they've been working on. And it's, as far as I can tell, it focuses on 2 areas, somewhat near Tokyo, these 2 little towns. And they've created this sort of custom theme for it. And they're mostly people that are into OpenStreetMap is sort of how they found out about this project. And so they've got actually a different map tile system in there because they wanted to update even faster than the normal OpenStreetMap that we use. And the people in Japan actually started off, I believe, with this project, and I can't really pronounce it, Oshima, which I believe means island in Japan. But this is an island off of Japan, and it's relatively small. And I think that they worked with the tourism bureau or something to basically go into this island. And they went and they got like these aerial drones and stuff, and like flew them around, and like got all these people to go out there and like map out this island. And you can see that they've made actually a ton of different pages. This isn't even the comprehensive view, but there's a ton of different pages that they've made. They pretty much blanketed the island and gotten pretty much every single thing on the project. And they actually made things during this like hack day on this island. Like this was like some kind of augmented reality thing where you move your phone around and you see like what are the different LocalWiki pages that are also mapped in there and stuff. I don't know how they did this, or it's really cool. And so like this is a guy in Japan saying like LocalWiki is wonderful, future can be seen there. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And I can't understand any of the things that he says in his Twitter. It's all in Japanese. So another project that's worth talking about that sort of appeared over the past year is openwiki.org in Oakland, California. And so this project was started at, again, at like a hackathon type event about a year ago. And it sort of started out slow, and they sort of gradually kept holding more and more events. And I could talk about this in a lot of detail, but they hold right now, so there's a group of about 80 people as far as I could tell. They're on a mailing list in Oakland. They get involved with the OpenWiki, and they hold meetings twice a week. These are all volunteers, twice a week. Once is at this hackerspace pseudo room, which is what this picture is, and the other is on Sundays, which is at the history room at the local library. And so they actually go to this history room, they work with the librarians there, and they geek out and they like scan pictures and like take pictures of maps and record details and all this stuff and just try and digitize all this history. And it sort of fuses into this project that's about sort of contemporary Oakland, and they're merging in all this amazing history. And what's really cool about this project is that, so this is the growth of OpenWiki over time, basically over the past year or so. And you can see that it was like nothing really happened until that spike, which was sort of the hackathon event, and then some pages are made, and then it kind of just sort of sat around, and it was slow growth, and they were still having meetings at that time. Every week they were having meetings, but not a lot was happening. Then they started having these history editathons, and then they brought in all these people in Oakland that were really interested in history, and these local bloggers and so forth, and then it just started like taking off. And now if you look at OpenWiki, it's got like 200 edits a day or something. It's really crazy. And this is like a picture of, I guess, some kind of car. I wasn't here, but you could write on the car, and so someone tagged the car with openwiki.org/artmurmur, which is the name of the event, to sort of advertise the fact that there was a page on the OpenWiki about it. And there's actually a lot more projects. Those are just the ones that I have like pretty pictures that I could put in slides of. And so I guess the question is, like, the broader question is, like, what are we trying to do? Like, why are we doing LocalWiki? Why are we working on this? And so what we really want is to open, share, and collect the world's local knowledge, ultimately, like as a global project. And we want anyone, anywhere, to be able to learn about their community, regardless of whether or not they have a LocalWiki instance at the time. And so the question is, like, how can we do this better? How can we improve on what we're doing so far? And so what we try to think about right now is, like, what are the barriers that prevent growth, that prevent LocalWiki from becoming something on the scale of OpenStreetMap or Wikipedia? And so one thing that I think is really important to keep in mind is, like, the Davis Wiki was started in 2004, and that the web itself, like the structure of the web, the way people use the web, the way people use computers, is extremely different than it was in 2004. The way people exchange and collaborate and share information has changed radically. And so we need to think about that, think in that context when we think about what we want the future of LocalWiki to be. And in order to truly democratize local knowledge, is to take a phrase from the other talk that's coming up, we have to adapt in order to do that. Because if we just keep doing exactly what we're doing now, we may not serve as many people as we can. In fact, I don't think it's possible for us to. So one big thing is mobile. So right now, like in 2004, obviously there was no real mobile phones with smartphone capabilities and so forth. And so obviously everyone asked us, like, when is LocalWiki going to have a cool mobile thing? And we don't really have the resources right now to do a whole lot. And so the first step, the step we're doing taking right now is basically creating, soon, in a month or two, when you go to a LocalWiki instance, you'll see it'll look really nice on your phone. You'll be able to move around the map. You'll be able to click edit and edit the map. And you'll actually be able to click edit on the page and see this sort of very simplified editor, move around in it, click on a photo, upload a photo when you're running around and so forth. And then you can like click on the whole thing and see the different things that are available. And this is sort of the first step for sort of mobile support, given our sort of limited resources. And so by having this mobile web experience, like that's what we're going to focus on from there on out, once we have that. And then eventually try and figure out how to build like a native mobile app for different platforms. But then there's this problem of like, making an app is kind of weird. Like, do we need a CUWiki app, a ToledoWiki app, an ArborWiki app, you know, a DetroitWiki, DavisWiki, SACWiki? I mean, it's kind of weird. And so that brings us to the idea of LocalWiki, more than just as a piece of software that you install, but as a platform. And so what do I mean by platform? And it's sort of good to take an example of OpenStreetMap. And so OpenStreetMap it was started in 2005. And the idea behind OpenStreetMap was to create a free and open world map so that anyone could take any of the data, anyone could take the map and build anything on top of it without any restrictions in terms of copyright or anything like that. And so this, like, people don't really use OpenStreetMap. They don't like go to openstreetmap.org and like use it because it's not really that useful. But what people do is people build applications on top of OpenStreetMap. They do data analysis on top of OpenStreetMap. Like Foursquare uses OpenStreetMap. And people use it as a platform for building other things. And so what we want is to sort of try and figure out a way for LocalWiki to be something like that people can use as part of something that's larger. And right now, this is actually really hard. And so this is hard. So like just in my area where I live in California, at sfwiki.org, openwiki.org, berkeley.wiki.org, richmond.localwiki.org, Wiki of Good Living for San Carlos, sacwiki.org, daviswiki.org, chicowiki.org, and there's probably some others that I've forgotten. And so it becomes difficult because like this is only representing a certain number of places. Some of these aren't really maintained, like wikiofgoodliving.org, it hasn't been upgraded, the guys like checked out. You know, some of them like ChicoWiki have a lot of content, but they don't really have maintainers. And so like to build a platform to suck data into this and pull data out is kind of weird. It's sort of hard to imagine that totally working. And so like this is awesome that there are all of these people that are taking this initiative and creating these awesome independent LocalWiki instances. But it's also kind of paradoxically bad because in ways it can impede growth and discovery. And so basically what I mean by this is like, so right now, if I start a new LocalWiki project, it starts out at 0. So basically, I have to start for years and years, I have to work for years and years to get a high search ranking, which is an incredibly important thing. This is just one example. So like if I search on Google for Boston Marathon bombings, the first link after their embedded news thing is a Wikipedia page that was created just like a week ago, right? 2 weeks ago. And so even like super new pages from Wikipedia, from Yelp, from City Search, all these things are instantaneously ranked really well. And this is also the case with DavisWiki. Any page on DavisWiki is ranked incredibly well on Google because it's been around for years and years. It's gotten a lot of good search reputation. But OpenWiki, which has done an incredible amount of in-person outreach to people in the community, they're getting a lot of people together. Even so, like this is an incredibly great, I didn't include the whole page, but this really cool article on Lake Merritt. Anyone that lives in Oakland, anyone that's searching for Lake Merritt on Google should see this article. Maybe not after, maybe like one under Wikipedia. And so if I search for Lake Merritt on Google, it's like a Yelp link and a Wikipedia link and like some other stuff. And this is because like Google doesn't know that openwiki.org is like part of LocalWiki and it should be ranked really well. And so the OpenWiki link is like on page 4 or 5, which is actually pretty good in that particular case. But it's even worse for a lot of other places. And so sort of another sort of tangent here, but related to the idea of a platform, is the idea of structured data. So what do we want to be able to answer more interesting questions for people, because now people expect a higher level of interactivity with things like this. So we want to be able to answer, what are all the cafes with Wi-Fi that are open at 9 p.m. in the Mission District? Or where are all the nonprofits that provide food support that are open on Saturday? Or where are all the hospitals with urgent care centers that are open on Sunday? And so things like that we can't really answer with the current incarnation of LocalWiki. And so the first step is basically, if you visited a lot of LocalWikis, you'll see they all have this little HTML table over to the left that has like information. It's just a standard table. And what we're going to do is replace that with something that looks exactly the same, but when you click edit, is a form. So like you can click on hours and pull down to the exact hours, just like editing a page on Yelp or something like that. And it's much easier to edit, especially on a phone too. And this gives us a structure that we can work with and have an API and so forth. And then quickly moving through this other idea, the other barrier that we face is this idea of starting a new project. Like, I don't know if I have the time or energy to start like the wiki for my place, right? So like that's a big project if you're not a big group of people. And so what we need to do is sort of lower the perceptions of failure by broadening the notion of project. And so ultimately we need to make it easy to get started, really, really easy. People just want to share and learn about their local community. And so our first step for this is basically a centralized LocalWiki hub where people can have a frictionless way to learn and share without any kind of technical or logistical challenges. And that it can serve as a repository for structured and unstructured local information, and ultimately a global and universal platform for developers to build upon, just like OpenStreetMap. And so imagine just sort of hypothetically going to LocalWiki.org, searching volunteer, and finding all nearby volunteer opportunities no matter where you are. And so we don't really know how this is going to work. So this is like a diagram of potentially how something like this could work, which I drew last night, which is like, there's the hub, and then like there's these different geographies, and some of them send you to like /sf, like localwiki.org/sf, some of them send you openwiki.org, some of them send you /marin, and we have these geographies and we sort of dispatch based on that. But ultimately, the people know that they could go to the LocalWiki hub to find information about where they live, and you can contribute and collaborate about where they live. But we know that we need it. And so like this is a really cool thing that I found out about. This is a picture of these people in Berkeley in the 70s for this project called Community Memory, where they installed these like terminals around Berkeley. I don't know if you guys know about this. Okay. So like I just learned about this. I'm like, this is so cool. These guys look so cool. It's the 70s. And they installed these like hubs, these like physical machines where you walked up and you type things in. And like their whole idea was like, we need to like create a new form of like community interaction by like, connecting people through this digital device. And they didn't actually, I mean, it got taken over by like Craigslist and stuff, you know, but they had this really cool quote, which is, strong, free, non-hierarchical channels of communication, whether by computer and modem, pen and ink, telephone, or face-to-face, are the front line of reclaiming and revitalizing our communities, which I thought was like, yes, like tech people back then was so much cooler than tech people now. And so that's pretty much it. Hopefully I didn't go too long. And this is a picture from Raleigh. So, thank you.
What interesting comments about the national picture and the local picture. I just want to remind Philip that at the University of Illinois, Champaign, Urbana, 50 years ago, Plato was established, which was the first system of having distributed terminals throughout the city, being able to communicate with the university, which then enabled the local library to be able to access the card catalog of the university library. It enabled people to write games and lessons so that students in classes were taking math and so on. So this is a 50-year project of bringing the power of computers to the community outside of where the mainframes were in the main institutions. Okay, so let's have a quick discussion. Yes?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess in Champaign, Urbana, one of the things that Brian didn't mention is that one of the things that we thought about with the CU Wiki was to try to have something that would be as easy to use as Facebook, but wouldn't be Facebook basically. And we know that around the world, people are using Facebook to do some of the things that we're talking about, what LocalWiki would be used for, especially with the new search algorithm that Facebook just implemented that enables you to really do detailed social searching for what's going on in your community. And so just to speak to the global, like I was reading recently that in Trinidad, for example, it's extremely common for people to use Facebook to stay connected to like their high school classes. Like people are digitizing like school yearbooks from like the 50s and 60s in Trinidad like mad and posting them to Facebook and tagging all their friends. So I guess so in the face of this mass social media that's quite large and quite global, how is LocalWiki communicating? How it's different? What's the added value of LocalWiki as opposed to Facebook, and how do you make the case for that?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question, because it's like we don't want to do something just to do it, right? Like, you know, in the case of Facebook, I think it's the utility of Facebook. It has a lot of different utilities, right? But the ultimate utility is like it connects you to a bunch of people that you know, and so you can broadcast, you can communicate. What Facebook isn't, though, isn't a shared project that is, you know, basically like I think of LocalWiki gives a community a shared project and shared goals. And so you're not just like sending something out there to communicate with your community, and that's not how the community cohesion equation works with LocalWiki. It's more like you're creating a project together that has increasingly increases in value over time. And so like, you know, you're not just like asking people something, you're building something together. And I think that's sort of the most fundamental difference between something like LocalWiki and something like Facebook. I think in the old days, like with DavisWiki in 2004, a lot of people did use it as a communication system, right? So you could post messages to people, they could respond, you could see who was living near you. I think in the future, that probably isn't the best role for something like LocalWiki. What we should focus on is basically like ways to help people learn about their local community and share what they know about their local community and make it open and accessible to everyone. And that's not really what Facebook does. Facebook has like some local information. They have like these business pages on there that are just like, you know, whatever. And it's like a good way to learn about what your local business like has out there and for them to communicate. But it's not a good way to record, you know, history and you know, everything in between. Business.
Yeah, well, I can just give a quick counterexample. I mean, so in Champaign, Urbana, so we have a Facebook group, and just this week actually it's about 7 or 8 African American individuals in their 60s and 70s have been sharing information, their memories basically of a local bar that no longer exists. So I mean, I think I agree with what you're saying, but I think empirically, I'm not sure that it's accurate.
Well, I mean, they're communicating, right? So it's a back and forth conversation.
But it's public. I mean, it's a public. I mean, anyone can go to the site and access and listen in on the conversation and join if they want to.
So it's similar to like, so the format is very different, right? So like a LocalWiki page gives you a context, right? So like a long conversation between two people, while it may be public, is not the same as actually like having the full context, right? So like, it's not organized, right? So the information is not collected in a really meaningful way. And so I think that's one of the biggest things. And also like it does kind of fall off the radar after a while, right? So like it's similar to, so when we started DavisWiki in 2004, there were a lot of popular, like there was this LiveJournal site for UC Davis, which was like, it had thousands of people on it, and people were like, why would you do anything aside from the LiveJournal site? You can ask any question you want and get an answer. But the problem is people ask the same questions over and over, right? And people want to know the same things. And then there are lots of other things that build off of each other. And I think that's a fundamental thing about any form like that. You can have a power to push something out to a lot of people and get a lot of responses, but it's not ultimately building something.
Yeah, I agree, but I think it would be really valuable if we actually had like LocalWiki, Facebook, side by side, maybe like a 3-minute video, like, because I think what you're saying is clear and makes a lot of sense, but I think to actually have that in some kind of crystallized form, I think would probably get more people hooked into why LocalWiki is important.
You know, if we take the big picture and try to understand really how the information society is being created. That first of all, we're using these products that have essentially defined what's possible for people. So this whole question of Microsoft versus open source, I mean, people just sort of feel Microsoft is the way you sort of have to go because that's the norm in the society. And the same is true with Facebook. I mean, Facebook is massive, and but there are a couple of points. First question that's really interesting is this word community. What is community? And so it's true, you could get on a bus going to work, and there's a certain sense in which everybody that gets on the bus sort of knows each other, and that's sort of a community. but it's really a facilitated thing by the bus. No bus, those people are gone. So we have to really talk about what is a community. And the other side of it is really, and this is really fundamental, who owns the server? Because Facebook is a gated community. And we all know that gated communities, somebody can pull the plug. And who owns the information? These are really kind of tough questions. And the whole thing about LocalWiki, and I want to emphasize the old LocalWiki. The centralization aspect is changing the notion of the autonomy and challenge for a community to self-organize. And as soon as we talk about centralization, then suddenly issues emerge. And because we could see, for example, a group that says, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to build local wikis everywhere. You know, like we had a local wiki, a mystery wiki for CU. And we just had to, you know, it was put up and people disappeared. We just sort of pushed that aside and developed a real one that had organic links. But these are important issues with regard to the future. What is community? And who is going to own the servers of the big data that we create from bottom up? And what I really want to avoid is the idea that, like BTOP, local communities that don't have a sustainable strategy are going to end up with the public infrastructure, or infrastructure created by public money, being essentially used by the telecoms. I mean, that is a potential future. And so what we have to do is look at LocalWiki as the autonomy of a local community, and then solve the problems within the framework of how we define those terms and so on. Anyway, that's a...
Yeah, can I just
Yeah, of course.
And then just because I want to just touch on what you said about autonomy. So like, this is just a picture, I don't know if you can see it, of the sort of random way that this LocalWiki hub will play out. But ultimately, we're very, very on board with autonomy. That means a few different things, though. It could mean you have your own server, you have your own domain name. It could mean the actual project is being run by members of the community and administered by members of the community. But ultimately, we need to make it easier for people to start new projects and to do this. And so we need to have a place for people to do that and to connect these projects. But so like in this picture, there's openwiki.org, which is running on their own server, right? And then there's /Marin, which would be like hosted on our thing and so forth. So we do want to figure out how to connect those. But the short-term plan is just figure out a way to get more people doing this. So
we're reinventing the society. This is the discussion of the democracy of the future. I mean, I think we really need to think about how the historic moments in the history of this country, people have conceptualized the future and debated it. I mean, that's what the Federalist Papers are all about. Debating what is the structure of this country, how is democracy going to work, what are the sectors of society that we need to pull in or not. We're reinventing the society, and all those same questions have to come up and are coming up. What we're not doing is connecting the threads back through history so that we really understand the historic importance of the information revolution that we're in. We're acting as it's a business model, these are just toys and so on and so on. No, no, no. I'm sure that in the context of the Industrial Revolution, people were just talking about, damn, I used to work in my living room, now I gotta get up and go to this damn place. And they weren't thinking about this as an industrial revolution or anything. They were thinking about the inconvenience of having to go to work because they used to have spinning jennies and whatever in their living rooms. So now we've got the same kind of issues, and what we need to do is to raise the level of our thinking so that we accept the historic responsibility of the moment we're in. Shamin.
Yeah, I have actually a couple of questions. The first one, you said some wikis are really successful in terms of many pages are there, the frequency of the visitor is very great, and some are not that. So, I have some plan to start my local wiki for my own community in Bangladesh. So, I'm really, from your experience, you have almost 1 decade experience in that. What are the success factors, like, from your experience, like, how you can say that a local wiki is a great chance to be successful in the future? What are the motivation, or what's your experience on that? Is my first question.
So I think there's a few different models that we've seen work, and it sort of depends on the time frame. So if you're basically like, this is a 5-year proposition, I'm willing to say that this is not going to be a big thing until 5 years from now. We're going to diligently work on it a little bit every month until then. That's a whole different proposition. And Ed's going to talk about LocalWiki, which is a 6-year, 7-year-old project. And then there's also like, how do you get OpenWiki type success, where you've got a group of people that are doing this? And I think OpenWiki, for the time being, is the model to emulate, where you're on it, you are diligent with having meetings, with doing direct outreach to people, because that's the easiest way.
What do you mean
What's that?
What do you mean you mean like
You as in like the project spearheaders, the people that are actually taking on the initiative to create the project. And so, the people in Oakland that were spearheading this, were organizing these meetings, are not the people that have written the content on there, most of it. They've gotten people involved, they connected with organizations in the community, and because they are seen as people in that community, they can go to groups, they can go to a show and say like, hey, check out OpenWiki, I live in Oakland, you know me, you know that this is a legitimate thing, this isn't just some kind of corporate thing. And so I think that model of direct outreach by the people involved is probably the one that would be the most fruitful. But what we do want is basically like to be able to extend some of the benefits of projects that have been around for a longer period of time to new projects. So like, for instance, if on DavisWiki I could create a page about something in Ann Arbor, right, or Ann Arbor's a bad example, in Oakland, it would be ranked higher on Google than the page on OpenWiki, probably. And then people would find it and be able to add what they know. And so we kind of want to figure out a way for people to discover these projects more easily, and hopefully, shorten that time gap when starting a project before you've had 5,000 pages, where you can get people to discover it and contribute.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
So do you have any kind of like filtration process or administration? Like, I'm wondering if someone posts some garbage, but he or she thinks that is good, is there any way to rectify that? Or do you prefer that?
So as an organization, as a project, a global project, we don't do any of that. So it's totally like the community itself figures out what they want to do. What most communities do, like technically there's administrators on the site, you can block people, you can lock things and so forth. But what communities ultimately do is up to them. And so like the majority of LocalWiki instances right now, we don't even run on our own servers. That'll probably change as we build out this sort of hosted thing. But yeah, so it's up to people. But most of the time, like on DavisWiki, which is the example I know the best, people post nasty garbage. Like it's like once every 5 months. No, it's not very often. And so actually, there's a famous case right now. This is totally a tangent. This guy Matthew Keys, who's a Reuters person, he's the only person that was ever banned from DavisWiki. Now he's being indicted by the federal government for like collaborating with anonymous hackers or something. It's very weird. But it's telling how good DavisWiki was in banning him. They knew to ban him. But it was the only human being that's ever been banned that wasn't a spammer or something, generally speaking. It's been a very, usually very civil. So.
I'm going to ask these two women here. I want one of them to ask a question.
Let's see. Okay. Well, I was just thinking, for the LocalWiki app, I use like a game guides app that has, it's just, you search what game you're playing and then it will look up that wiki for that game. Could you do that for each community, where you could search the community within the LocalWiki app and then you'd pull up that community's wiki with the subheadings and the pages along with that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we can go a lot further than that. So like, ideally, in the ideal world, right, there are LocalWiki projects everywhere, and every community has LocalWiki pages about all the different things in the community. So like this building, I would be able to take my phone out and say, what's the history of this building, right? How does this building relate to that building? What's the history of this campus? When was this campus constructed? And a lot of that, there are apps, because Wikipedia pages are geotagged, some of them are geotagged. But Wikipedia is only really, you can only really have a Wikipedia article for Golden Gate Bridge. A lot of notable things. This campus probably has a Wikipedia article. The individual buildings probably don't. The statues and parks and so forth and throughout Chicago probably don't. Maybe some of them do, because Chicago is a really big city. But I think ideally, yeah, we want people to be able to be anywhere in the world and take their phone out and be able to discover what's around them and take a picture of something and do it.
That is augmented reality.
Yeah, it would be sort of like that, yeah. And I think that's the future of how people are probably going to interact with LocalWiki.
Okay, Brian, do you have any final comments you want to make? Okay. Philip, do you have any final comments? We're just a couple of minutes, and we're going to have a follow-up session to this after we break for lunch. And so there's going to be a lot more talk about the Ann Arbor Wiki, more about the CU Wiki, and exciting discussions of the future. So we'll reconvene after lunch with exciting discussions of the future. Thank you.